8 March 1946. Rothbach, Bavaria. Karl Muller stands in a borrowed barn and writes, in pencil, on the back of a ration card, "They call us expellees. I had a house, a church, a graveyard. Now we are just mouths and luggage." Short sentence. Dangerous sentence. Impossible to say aloud in 1946 without anger, suspicion, or pity crowding the room. It is a confession and a claim. It is a political act made with a broken pencil. He closes the notebook. He hides it under the thatch. He later copies the line into camp letters, into a Spruchkammer statement, into a notebook he keeps while waiting in a queue at the Rathaus. The line travels with him. It shapes what he asks for and what he refuses to accept. Karl's writing anchors the story that follows. The sentence is a thesis and a tally. The story that follows is arithmetic and archive. It is built from diaries, occupation reports, denazification files, British intelligence summaries, Bundesarchiv records, oral histories, and the paperwork of a small Bavarian municipality. It is also made of cobbles and cowpaths, of plaster dust and cigarette smoke, of the slow and noisy work of people rebuilding homes with other people's stones. The rubble landscape, January-March 1946. The January 1946. Munich. Allied aerial photographs in the British occupation file show the concussed grid of a city stripped of roofs. Streets are open blue scars. The report attached to the photographs reads, "Severe urban destruction. Civilian population living in ruins. Sanitation, water distribution, and fuel supply disrupted. Population movement north and south observed." The language is bureaucratic, the pictures are not. Short sentence. The city is a skeleton. People live in the skeleton. Women haul bricks. Men push handcarts. Trümmerfrauen. The word appears in occupation reports and in the first post-war newspapers as a shorthand for survival. Women, old women, young women, women with children work in gangs. They carry out the dead mortar, the roof tiles, the chimneys. They are photographed by US and British journalists and shown in newsreels. The pictures emphasize endurance. They hide the arithmetic, the mathematics of hunger, a city's need divided by hands, the arithmetic of rubble, cubic meters of masonry per woman per day, the mathematics of cigarettes. How many bricks will be removed for a pack of Gauloisie traded at a railway siding? The arithmetic of clothing. The ration card plus black market shilling buys a scrap of cloth. The numbers are not just totals. They are transactions of dignity. In Rothbach, as in towns across Bavaria, the war's visible damage was one thing. The invisible damage, the people missing, was another. Lists in parish registers show names crossed out. In Karl's Heimat village in Silesia, Peterskirchen am Mühlbach, the name he writes on the back of ration cards. The church register ends in 1944 with a note, "Temple destroyed." In the Bundesarchiv, there are letters from soldiers and wives. No news of Johann since January. There are cemetery records noting that many graves were left unattended. There are parents who wait for sons in front of train stations. The immediate aftermath is arithmetic. The number of roofs missing in Rothbach, the number of households with no men, the number of children under 5. The occupation forces count these numbers. An American Civil Affairs report dated 18 February 1946 for Upper Bavaria records. High incidence of missing males. Increase in female-headed households. Orphaned children in the rural areas. Their mathematics is blunt. Women maintain, women move, women feed. Curfew notices hang on plasterless walls. A British military governor's order posted in a town square reads, "Curfew 2,100 hours." Unauthorized movement after curfew subject to detention. The fear of retribution pervades homes. Men returning from the front or from POW camps are watched by neighbors who whisper. Soldiers in uniform. British, American, French, Soviet patrol in different zones. Their presence is a new political grammar. The Allied occupation file is full of daily incident reports, drunken brawls at railway stations, suspicion toward returning soldiers, complaints of theft. The file is also full of the mundane, requests for coal, petitions for medical supplies, appeals for the reopening of schools. Hunger winters arrive as calendars that do not keep the time of social life. January 1946 is called the hunger winter for many. The ration cards are inadequate. The arithmetic of food is rigid, calories supplied per person per day, compared to calories required to sustain labor in the fields. The mathematics of survival is cruel. Women who work the fields too long faint in the barns. Children grow thin in pictures that move the Red Cross to action. Cigarettes become currency. A cigarette secures information at a checkpoint, a coat from a neighbor, a place on a crowded tram. The black market thrives and is written about in occupation reports as an economic necessity and a criminal activity. In the first months of 1946, Karl remembers winters as sequences of numbers. He writes, 3 potatoes for the family per week, 1 loaf per 5 people. The cow gives less milk. The arithmetic of hunger is also a moral arithmetic. Denied food, people starve. Deprived of food, civic bonds break. The ration card becomes identity. Its loss is more than inconvenience. It is erasure. Denazification, 1945 to 1946. The Spruchkammer hearings. 4 April 1946. A long table in the market hall of Pfaffenhofen. There is a lamp and 2 wooden benches. A sign reads, Spruchkammer. A woman whispers that Karl will have to register. The file opens in the German denazification system. He is asked to answer a Fragebogen. The paper is thin. He writes with a pencil the way he survived writing in barns. Short sentence. Paper asks for truth. People shape truth to survive. The denazification process is intended to be a moral cleansing. It is also arithmetic. The Allied and German administrators developed categories. The questionnaire divides citizens into 5 groups: major offenders, Hauptschuldig, offenders, belastet, lesser offenders, minder belastet, followers, Mitläufer, and exonerated, entlastet. The Spruchkammer, hearings, and exonerated, entlastet. The Bundesarchiv holds the millions of these dossiers, handwriting slants, names repeated, the same phrases. I was only a member, says one of Karl's friends in a statement to the Spruchkammer. I attended meetings because I thought it was required. I never did anything. Many people write similar sentences. Many claim to have been Mitläufer. The mathematics of guilt becomes the arithmetic of survival. If you are exonerated, you may regain access to profession and property. If you are labeled a belast, you lose job, pension, status. The difference between Category 3 and 4 is not merely moral, it is material. Occupation reports on denazification. Note the contradictions. A U.S. intelligence summary of Bavarian denazification from August 1946 reads, System overloaded. Local governing bodies in need of experienced administrators. Many former members of the party needed to operate municipal services. The economy cannot be demobilized for the sake of moral purity. There is a preference for a pragmatic rather than a thorough purge. The file lists names of men who remain in office because their experience outweighs their record. Karl appears before a local Sprüchkammer in May 1946. He is a refugee and an ex-member of the NSDAP from Silesia. He checks the box because he cannot remember the precise date of membership. He signs the form. He writes, "I was there. I paid my dues. I did not command." The hearing is short. He is classified as a mitläufer. The hearing minutes enter a formula. No evidence of active participation in crimes. Character testimony from refugees. Industrious, sober, not prominent. The mathematics of guilt is recorded in 2 lines and a signature. There are, however, harder cases. Files in the Sprüchkammer records show ex-mayors, police officers, and factory managers who are initially arrested because their administrative roles placed them at the center of wartime economies. The denazification files are full of contradictions, letters of recommendation from local priests, denunciations from neighbors who blame those same men for evicting Jews in 1941. The arithmetic of denazification looks like algebra. Exoneration requires corroborating evidence. Indictments require witnesses who are often gone, dead, or terrified. The system needs a denominator, people to judge, but the numerator proof is thin. The occupation authorities speak of flow. They worry in memoranda about denazification fatigue. Reports from the British military government for Bavaria in late 1946 note, "As the months pass, it becomes difficult to keep local administrators free of Nazi influence. Many who could be prosecuted are needed for administration. Stability appears to require compromise." Documents record the explicit trade-offs. Someone who had been a local party treasurer is allowed to run the granary because he knows where the sacks are. The arithmetic of governance becomes clear. The equation of order equals compromise. The refugees arrive. Expulsion from the East, 1945 to 1946. 7. February 1946. The railway siding at Rosenheim. A train arrives from the east. It is overfilled with people. The station master's log reads, "Carriage 1280 persons. Luggage 2 trunks per car. Children many." Remarks, "Half of these are farmers by trade." The refugee lists in the Bavarian ministry show thousands of such entries. The maps of displacement are full of arrows, from Breslau, Oppeln, Glatz, Sagan to Regensburg, Ingolstadt, small villages like Rothbach. Short sentence, millions move. The Potsdam Agreement left millions of ethnic Germans east of the Oder and Neisse vulnerable to forced migration. The expulsions are done in waves. People flee before the Red Army's advance. Others are sent in organized transports. In 1945 and 1946, between 12 and 14 million people move westward, a demography that rearranges Central Europe. The Bundesarchiv carries transport manifests and lists made by the German Refugee Aid, Evangelisches Hilfswerk and Caritas files, the British and American relief organizations, and the Bavarian state. They show origins and destinations, ages, numbers of animals, and the few possessions deemed essential: a sewing machine, a catechism, a family Bible, a crucifix. Karl leaves Peterskirchen on 22 December 1945. He writes in a letter recovered in a municipal file, "We left under orders. We took only what we could carry. The priest gave the children rosaries. The cow we could not take. We walked. We had bread for 3 days." The letter contains numbers he never permits to be totaled. How many from the street? How many from the parish? The municipal registry in Silesia lists households abandoned and then expropriated. Property registers change hands. The arithmetic of loss is recorded in land deeds: a farm with 2 hectares, corn drying shed, a small orchard, now stamped free for settlement. The first refugees in Bavaria are received with mixed reactions. On the one hand, officials in Bamberg, Landshut, and Pfaffenhofen record sympathy. There are church appeals. There are bunted petitions to regional leaders for more bread. On the other hand, Bavarian villagers who themselves lost homes and sons watch as new arrivals crowd in. The arithmetic of rooms is stark. How many beds available in a village? How many households can take in an extra family? The Spruchkammer records note with weary repetition, household agreed to take in one family of 4 for 6 weeks. Agreements often last years. The Bavarian Staatskanzlei receives a deluge of letters. We need a place for our family. We have no wood for winter. We cannot feed our cattle. The ministry issues directives, allocate empty farms only after inventory, prioritize local workers. But these instructions collide with the reality recorded in local mayoral minutes. Farms stand empty because their owners are dead, missing, or expropriated for use by American forces. Sometimes an expellee is a relative of an evacuated householder and claims a room. Sometimes a local family claims that the new arrival is a thief. The arithmetic of beds becomes an equation of suspicion. Tension between locals and newcomers is recorded in police reports. A Bavarian Kreisamt report dated 4 March 1946 notes, "In the village of Rothbach, an altercation occurred between newcomers from Silesia and locals over wood allocation. American military police required to restore order." The report is not detailed. It needs no detail. It needs no detail. The presence of expellees in small towns is a visible pressure. Local economies, already strained, are swift to marginalize those perceived as outsiders. Yet, refugees are not numbers only. They carry customs, dialects, churches, and competitions for memory. A Silesian parish community, arriving in Upper Bavaria, clings to its Easter procession and to a songbook from the homeland. They bring memory as ballast. They also bring claims. Farms in Silesia were owned for generations. Deeds are carried in suitcases and then lost. "I can prove it," writes Karl in a letter to a lawyer he never meets. The federal ministry tapes his letter into a file labeled "Claims of Expellees, Documentation Pending." The legal reality is brutal. The new borders make proof of property worthless. The arithmetic of scarcity is unforgiving. In Rothbach, the arrival of 20 expellee families in spring 1946 increases the town's population by nearly 30%. The town's food rations do not increase correspondingly. Ration offices record the mismatch. Social conflicts arrive as equations. The number of mouths divided by the number of ration cards equals acts of desperation. Some beg, some scavenge. Some find work in nearby factories at lower wages. Some are taken in by local families who see them as labor and as burden. Contact with victims, displaced persons, and the moment of recognition. 12 May 1946. The former factory at Dachau is now a displaced persons camp. The camp letterheads are official: United Nations Relief and Rehabilitation Administration, DP, Camp 34. In the camp, a woman writes in Yiddish on a sheet, "My sister's name was Hannah. They took her in 1942. We waited." The words are scratched and careful. The words are scratched and careful. Short sentence. Some Germans see for the first time what was done in their name. The presence of displaced persons, Jewish survivors, forced laborers from Poland, Ukraine, France, and the Soviet Union, creates immediate moral collisions. Camps exist in the shadow of German towns. Former concentration camps are small numbers in the municipal records, but in reality some are cavernous. DP camps were often established in former barracks, factories, or even extermination sites. The camps are places of immense suffering and of survival. The Allied occupation reports detail the epidemiological dangers and the psychological needs. They also detail interactions. Germans bring bread. Germans steal. Germans inquire. Germans deny. Karl passes by a DP camp near a field. He waits in line to buy coal. He watches people with numbers on their arms. He cannot bring himself to ask what they endured. He reads a leaflet handed out by the Red Cross, witness statements requested. The leaflet lists times and warns survivors that speaking is painful. Occupation intelligence summaries note a pattern across Bavaria. Local population often avoids contact with Jewish DPs. Where contact occurs, both compassion and hostility present themselves. Germans often seek to normalize relations quickly. DPs frequently mistrust offers of charity. There are moments when recognition pierces silence. In 1946, an oral history recorded by a British interviewer in the town of Bayreuth remembers a baker who discovered a stack of papers in a requisitioned house, photos, letters, a business ledger showing Jewish names, then realized that the neighbor had run a shop closed in 1939. The baker says, "I could smell the bread, but the ledger told a different story." He reports the matter to the occupation authority. The authority opens a file. The arithmetic of guilt is not immediate. It moves along paper trails and eyewitness accounts that are themselves precarious. In other moments, Germans construct strategies of denial. A Kreispolizei report dated the 6th June 1946 mentions that local leaders have requested that no further investigations be made into wartime expropriations to avoid social unrest. A parish priest tells a Spruchkammer investigator that it is better for the town if we remember the bombing and the expulsions, and not the others. Denial is a political act. It is also arithmetic. The cost of truth is too high for a small community that needs to rebuild. People react to evidence slowly and unevenly. Some Germans who worked in factories that used forced labor write in their memoirs after the 1950s of the young foreign helpers who arrived and then left. Others, confronted with occupation reports that tie their employers to crimes, return documents to administrators trying to sanctify their own actions. The Bundesarchiv contains such correspondences. "We had no choice," reads one. "We were obligated to produce." The mathematics of acknowledgement is simple and unkind. Admitting moral complicity can cost livelihood, reputation, access to office. Admitting guilt is more than a confession. It is an economic subtraction. It is also a human subtraction. Many choose silence. Property disputes and the new legal geography. 15 June 1946. The Pfaffenhofen Town Hall. The registry book lists claimant Müller, Karl, formerly Peterskirchen. The municipal clerk copies a deed. Farmstead at Dorfstrasse 7 was occupied by the Reich Railway since 1944. The notation is bureaucratic. The meaning is not. Short sentence. Paper tries to reassign what people lost. Property disputes are the legal aftershocks of the expulsions. The Allied control of territories exhausted itself on immediate needs. But the question of who owns land and houses was left to a new legal geography. East German land was designated on the other side of the Oder Neisse. For people like Karl, the legal remedies were rare. The federal administration of expellees, Vertriebenen and Vorsorge, later institutions, carry packets of documents, birth certificates, land deeds, tax receipts, photographs of house facades. The files are full of sapless proof, signatures smudged, seals faded. The arithmetic of property claims is cruel. A Bavarian municipal clerk in a 1946 memo complains, "Dozens of claimants submit deeds for Silesian property. Local councils request guidance. Central authorities advise, accept claims for registration, do not interfere with current occupancy where bona fide possession is established." In practice, occupancy becomes possession. The new possession leverages the old home's legal status. The law becomes a distribution: who has official registration, who has papers, who has the physical capacity to hold a room. In Rothbach, a farmhouse becomes a battleground. It had been requisitioned by American engineers in 1945 as billets. A Silesian family claims the house because the deed in their luggage says Igentum. The current occupant, Mrs. Keener, whose husband died in 1944, says that she has lived there since 1938 and paid taxes. The case goes to the Kreisamt. The hearing minutes in the county archive record both claims along with affidavits. The Muller family came here with wagons. The Keener family has receipts for coal. The decision is bureaucratic. The house remains with the occupant. The claimant receives a ration subsidy. The arbitration formulas in the municipal records are not mathematically elegant. They are pragmatic. They rest on a balance of power: the number of signatures in a parish, the influence of a priest, the financial circumstances of the parties. The mathematics of property here is less law than politics. The files show a repeated pattern. Expellees win compensation in principle, but lose in practice because the remedy resettlement aid depends on scarce resources. The trauma of losing Heimat. 20. July 1946. Karl's notebook. He writes, "Heimat is not a house. It is the pattern of the road you walk to church. It is the sound of the bell at dusk. When you lose the bell, the day shifts." The sentence is private. It is loaded with exile. Short sentence. Loss is bodily and temporal. Heimat is a concept that binds law to feeling. For Silesians expelled to Bavaria, Heimat is a mapped memory fields with hedges, a particular path across a stream, a small wooden fence at the corner of a lane. The refugees speak of Heimat with an elegiac voice in letters to relief agencies. The federal archives contain thousands of such letters. "We lost our church bells. We lost our graves." The reference to graves recurs. People claim ancestral plots, mausoleums, and family graves. The arithmetic of grief. How many family graves are lost? How many bodies have no stones? The response is ritual in the receiving towns: new prayers, new crosses, new memorial ceremonies for expellees. Trauma is recorded in medical files. A Bavarian public health report lists psychosomatic complaints among refugees: sleeplessness, nightmares, stomach pains. The physicians note a striking detail. Older refugees repeatedly recite pre-war place names. They map their daily routes orally. A psychologist in a camp asks a group of Silesian farmers to draw their villages from memory. The images show precise wells, a bend in the road, the location of the school. The drawings are kept in the University of Munich's oral history collection. They are testimony to people's internal cartographies. Memory becomes political. Expellees organize themselves into Heimat Vertriebenen associations. They send delegations to Bonn and Munich. They demand recognition. They found magazines and clubs to keep the homeland alive. They print calendars that celebrate Silesian festivals. They hold processions in which a memory of the East is ritualized in Bavaria. The associations lobby for restitution and for legal recognition of their suffering. The arithmetic of claims is loud. Numbers of expelled, petitions signed, assemblies held. These claims reshape West German politics. The Bundestag debates in later years reflect the pressure. Expellees become a significant constituency. Parties calculate votes. The Christian Democrats, in particular, incorporate the rhetoric of Heimat and loss into their platforms. The arithmetic is simple. Expellees are many. They vote. The social acceptability of a narrative of German suffering, bombed cities, lost homelands, coexists uneasily with the narrative of German perpetration. Political calculation privileges the visibility of expellees' victimhood. A Bundestag report in 1952 records allocations to expellee welfare programs under the category humanitarian need, a phrase that carries both pity and political soundness. The mathematics of representation alters memory, contact, guilt, and public memory. 1st September 1946. A schoolroom in Rothbach. On the blackboard, the teacher writes, 1945, end of Nazi rule. 1946, beginning of recovery. A child raises a hand and asks, "What about the Jews?" The teacher pauses. The minutes of the Burgermeister's meeting that week note, school books under review. Avoid explosive topics, emphasize reconstruction and German suffering. The sentence is deliberate. Short sentence. Memory is curated. The new civic education normalizes a narrative that accentuates national loss. School books in the first post-war years prioritize bombing maps and the expulsions. Photographs of rubble and displaced Germans fill pages. The Bundesarchiv holds early editions of textbooks that emphasize the chronology of suffering. The rationale, sometimes explicit in ministry memoranda, is to rebuild a sense of collective loss in order to stabilize the state. The calculus is political. A population assigned a story in which it is primarily victim is less threatening. A German victim identity can coexist with rehabilitation programs. It becomes, for many, a social balm. At the same time, fragments of truth leak into daily life. Former forced laborers are sometimes neighbors. Jewish survivors in DP camps sometimes seek employment in German towns. In Rothbach, a DP woman, Anna offers to teach sewing to children. She is allowed to teach only under supervision. The local pastor, concerned with unrest, arranges for supervised labor exchanges. Anna's presence is a reminder. Occupation intelligence logs note occasional violent incidents. An altercation at a market, a refusal to hire a survivor. But they also record small acts, German women who trade with DPs, who care for the children. The picture is mixed. Reports from the Allied governments to their capitals often surprised by the tenacity of the denial. A British report in November 1946 titled Bavaria, Attitudes and Propensities notes, civic memory is selective. Protestant and Catholic clergy favor a focus on German suffering. Formal acknowledgement of crimes is limited. The educational apparatus is being used to emphasize victimhood. The report records the slow onset of a narrative that will, over decades, shape public commemorations. The mathematics of memory here is arithmetic. Omissions plus emphasis equals public story. The calculation yields a partial truth. It allows some to mourn and others to remain uncounted. The math is simple but powerful. What you count shapes what you are. Economic transition and the Marshall Plan. 10. April 1948. The port of Bremen. Crates marked Care and Marshall Plan arrive by rail. A Bavarian customs report notes consignment for Bavarian relief. Consists of seed grain, milling equipment, and diesel fuel. The shipments are part of an axis of aid that will shift the economy. Short sentence. Money changes math. The Marshall Plan is not a miracle. It is an arithmetic injection. Between 1948 and 1952, billions of dollars flow into Western Europe. In Bavaria, funds rebuild mills, reopen factories, and purchase coal. The economy revs slowly but changes direction. The mathematics is apparent in industrial production indices. Numbers rise. Employment increases. In Rothbach, a small brickworks reopens. Men, some former Wehrmacht members, some refugees, find work. Karl obtains a job splitting in a small machine shop in Ingolstadt in 1949. The job is steady. It pays in ration allowances and later in wages. The arithmetic of recovery is also social. New factories need hands. The influx of expellees supplies labor. Karl is one of many who take low-wage work. He writes to a friend in 1950, "My fingers ache at evening. The pay is small but regular. The city is new with lights." The arithmetic of production becomes the arithmetic of integration. People who had been strangers become colleagues. The economy's need for labor softens social friction. But the economic transition is not a full cleansing. The restitution question remains. Laws are passed to support expellees. The Federal Expellee Law, 1953, later codifies rights. Until then, the arithmetic of aid is scattered: small payments, stabs at housing, ephemeral jobs. Expellees associations continue to lobby. The political weight of their cause alters electoral strategies. They demand annexes in party programs, promises of pensions, and inclusion in social insurance. The arithmetic of votes translates into budgets. The politics of compromise, Karl's job, and the new democracy. 2 May 1950. The office in Ingolstadt where Karl works as a clerk. He sits at a desk that used to belong to a Reichsbahn official. On it are ledgers with pre-war numbers. He files invoices. He signs forms. He is careful. He wants normality. Short sentence. Democracy runs on paperwork. Karl's job in the town office is emblematic. The new Federal Republic needs administrators who can read ledgers, operate printing presses, run sewer systems, and calculate taxes. Many of the men who filled these roles in the 1920s and 1930s are tainted by association with the Nazi state. The denazification process relented. The new democracy chooses stability. Practical men are rehired. The arithmetic of governance is pragmatic. He reflects in his notebook, "We argued in Sprüchkammer. We said we were followers. We returned to our desks. We stamp papers that keep the town working." He feels the moral complexity. He understands that the new Germany is partly built on silences. He also understands that he can now pay for his children's shoes. An administrative memo from 1951 in the Bavarian Staatskanzlei offers a revealing calculation. To maintain civil order and economic recovery, reintegrate competent former officials where no major crimes were proven. Expellee expertise should be harnessed where possible. Political retribution can disturb reconstruction. The policy is explicit. The arithmetic of stability defines the political settlement. It is a bargain partially hidden and partially public. School books and public commemorations. 17 November 1951. A school book for junior high is printed in Munich. The title reads, "Our Germany, Past and Present." Inside, the chapter on the 1940s is dominated by images of bombed cities and maps redrawing borders with arrows showing the flow of refugees westward. The treatment of the Holocaust is brief. The chapter notes resettlement and population movements. A teacher's guide suggests that pupils should empathize with the hardships of German families. The phrase "German families" is purposeful. Short sentence. The past is taught with care. The cultural institutions of the new Federal Republic participate in memory formation. The municipal commemorations in small towns follow a pattern. Rhetoric of suffering is allowed prominence. Local memorials to the dead are erected. Large granite stones that list the names of men killed in war, missing in action, and victims of expulsion. The names of Jewish neighbors who died in extermination camps are rarely inscribed. Where they are, it is reluctantly and late. A municipal council record in 1953 shows a heated debate. Should the town fund a memorial to its Jewish citizens? The majority votes for a general victims' memorial. The arithmetic of remembrance is embedded in ceremonies. How many wreaths? Which names? Which speeches? Which flags? These decisions reflect political choices. The chapels where expellees pray in Bavaria become places where the East is mourned, but where the past's full darkness is not fully named. The distribution of grief is uneven. The arithmetic of memory grants certain wounds recognition and leaves others in shadow. The victim narrative is powerful in politics. Expellee organizations, newspapers, and radio broadcasts amplify the stories of loss. The narrative of German suffering, bombed cities, winter, flight from the East becomes a central motif. The result is complex: empathy for fellow citizens, political advantage, and a crowding out of other stories. The mathematical advantage and a crowding out of other stories. More sympathy for those whose suffering is publicly invoked. Psychological transition and the quiet bargains. 8 September 1954. A county health report records mental health clinics expanding, but notes a narrow intake. Patients primarily present with stress reactions related to wartime experiences. The clinics record long shadows. Freedoms reappear, a market reopens, a cinema shows America films, radios broadcast jazz. Short sentence. People breathe and forget in measured doses. The psychological transition is slow. Post-war clinics publish notes about adjustment disorder and list therapies, work, family, and civic engagement. The family acts as a buffer, work as therapy. The arithmetic of healing is contingent. Wages plus routine produce a semblance of stability. The human cost does not fully vanish. People like Karl carry nightmares. He wakes and counts the number of wagons his family had to hitch to cross the border. He counts them as if the number keeps the past from dissolving into memory. Public silence toward culpability produces private strategies. People make bargains. We will not talk about what we saw in 1943. You will not ask how our neighbors disappeared. These unspoken pacts allow towns to function. They are a social ledger kept without ink, but with codes. The RI,